slide that we were looking for. All right, I think we're live.
So we are. Good morning.
There we go.
Welcome, welcome.
Good morning.
How are you doing today? Oh, look, I'm getting YouTube feedback on me. Let me just shush myself for a moment.
Shush yourself.
Well, I shushed myself. I rarely do it. Thanks I probably should do it more often. Thanks for joining us for the OneRing.net's panel at DragonCon this year. We may not be able to be there in person, but it's very, very exciting to be able to connect from all over the world. Literally, I'm in Scotland, to join you guys for our panel. I'm Green Dragon, Kirsten. I'm a senior staffer at the OneRing.net and a regular panelist at DragonCon, and just really very happy to be joining my colleagues today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Deej is my regular colleague.
Hi, I'm Deej. I am just outside of Atlanta. I am also a staffer with the OneRing.net. I also run a local group called Atlanta Tolkien Fans. And I am also very happy to be joining my colleagues who I have not seen in person for quite a while. So it's nice to see them here on my screen.
And I'm, let's see, I'm lots of people. I'm Jim, Mad-Eye Gamgee at the OneRing.net, and I'm also on the High Fantasy track staff. So playing that kind of bridging role for us here this morning. And I'm going to be running, occasionally we're going to pop up some images and some slides and PowerPoint stuff as we go through. So that's my job too.
We just recently lured Jim into becoming a OneRing staffer. We
had to really twist his arm, though. He really did not want to do it at all.
Eventually become combined.
We wore him down. We wore him down.
Yeah. And so now he's not only is an incredible person on the High Fantasy track staff, but he's also on the OneRing staff, and that's very exciting. So today, our goal, we have lots to cover. We decided that it would be fun to have a look back on the last 12 months since we all had a merry meeting at DragonCon, what's happened in the world of Tolkien fandom, and then what do we have to look forward to? And it's actually, as we were putting this panel together, I was surprised by how much there is coming up in terms of publications and shows and things, but also in terms of merchandise, new designs that are coming out. So occasionally I think we can end up in the slough of despond as Tolkien fans and feel like we're going through another drought season just because we haven't got the heady days of the movies coming out. But there's a lot going on. The Tolkien fandom is alive and well, so we're going to explore that this morning with you guys. And of course, we're very happy to have your questions. If you're watching along in YouTube and you want to put questions in the chat, I know that there are fabulous moderators who will relay them to us, and we'd love to hear your comments and answer your questions if we can.
Indeed.
So I think the first part of our presentation just tells you about the OneRing, and we could just go through that really quickly.
Because I'm sure you all know who we are. Exactly. And what we're about at this point. Yeah.
So the OneRing.net, we've been online since 1998, which means we are ancient in website terms. Obviously not personally, we're not ancient, but the website is. Still always has been 100% volunteer and not for profit. We all just do it because we love Tolkien fandom. We still have the Hall of Fire discussions in the chat room and the active message boards, and all kinds of regular happenings like Torn Tuesday on a Tuesday night, collecting the precious posts, etc. So still going strong. And indeed, staffers on the West Coast, I know, are gearing up to do annual celebrations for Bilbo and Frodo's birthday on the 22nd. And they won't be able to do them in person this year, but there are going to be online shenanigans. So you can look out for those coming soon. What else? What's our next page?
Yes.
Next.
Oops, we have a new Facebook group.
Oh, that's right. And here's an amazing exclusive that we're giving you that Jim has just thrown in there so casually. There is a Facebook group, that's not the exclusive, called the Worlds and Works of JRR Tolkien. That is the OneRing.net's official Facebook group. Shout out if you're a member of the Facebook group and you're watching this morning. That's a good place to hang out and chat and get to know people. And we can exclusively reveal that there is a new website design coming. This is the first time anyone is seeing this beyond 3 of us who've seen this. So Calasuri, who is one of our 4 founders and the original designer of the website, and also did the redesign quite a few years ago now, actually. He had said to me recently, you know, I need to redesign the website. We need to keep up with modern style. It needs to be more app friendly for people to use on their different devices, on phones, etc. And then, as if by magic, an email came from Gandalf Gary, known to his friends as just Gary, saying, I am a web designer and I love the One Ring, but very politely he said, but you guys need to redesign and I would like to volunteer to do it for you. So Calasuri said, yes, please. And Calasuri and I have met with Gary a few times and he's shown us different designs, and it's not far off from being released. So it will retain, fear not, if you're a One Ring regular and have been since 1998, it will retain the features that you know and love. It will still be easy to navigate. You will not lose the buttons that you love and the connections that you love. It will just be a more appropriate user interface for the way that websites work these days. So you guys are getting a sneak peek for the first time ever of the new website. Even Torn staffers haven't seen this before, right, Deej?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing it. It looks very cool, and it's very exciting news.
I think it's going to be just much more easily navigable, and as I say, much more, because people use the website on their phone more than anything else really these days. So it's going to be much more phone friendly.
There we go.
Coming soon.
So we're going to take a quick look back at some of the things, and it's going to be really quick because we got a lot that we can talk about in the hour.
Indeed.
So what's been happening? Some of you all may have gotten to see the Tolkien exhibit at the Morgan Library in New York City, which was last year, 2018, 19, early 19, I think. And the one at Oxford. Before that, we had a Paris Tolkien exhibit from October to February. It was spectacular. It was gigantic. It had wonderful tapestries. The main point on this page is this little book here in the right-hand corner is available, and particularly useful if you speak French, but beautiful even if you don't. So you can look online at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and you can find that and flesh out your Tolkien library. It was spectacular. But
and I'm very jealous, Jim, that you were able to go and see that, because
Yes.
I did get to see the exhibition in Oxford and in New York, but I did not get over to Paris. Unfortunately, the timing just didn't work out for me to get over there and see it there. But I'm so tempted to get that.
it's a gorgeous book. It's
Same.
got lots of things from the museum. It was the first foreign author highlighted at the Bibliothèque Nationale.
Yeah,
and
it's
it
the
was
first time
gigantic.
they've ever done a display about a non-French author. So that's a high honor for Tolkien.
The French love their Tolkien. Some of you tuned into the Hobbit Marathon with Andy Serkis back in May. He was doing COVID relief for a couple of charities. And that was a fun and full day.
Rebecca, did you listen into that?
I did, yeah. I got to listen to a little bit of it. Yeah, he did that on May 8th, reading for The Hobbit. And you can still donate, as it says, it was raising money for COVID relief. So you can still go to GoFundMe. It's called the Hobbit-a-thon COVID-19 Appeal. And so you can still donate. He read it cover to cover. I think it took 11 hours nonstop. He didn't stop. It was incredible. And if you didn't get a chance to hear it, they are going to be releasing it on audio.
Yep.
In I believe it's already on sale in the UK. So if you're in the UK, you can already get it. And I believe it'll be available to us in just a couple of weeks through HarperCollins Audio.
There you go. We'll get to that. That's looking forward. There have been a couple of new books that have been released. If you really like to collect all of these sets and have some spare change of some significant, you can get the new HarperCollins trilogy. Actually, it's The Hobbit and the trilogy. And second, you can get what Kirsten's holding up right now.
Ooh.
Sharing for a minute so you can see Kirsten holding up her book, which is The Worlds of JRR Tolkien, written by John Garth, the same guy who did Tolkien and the Great War. And Kirsten and I are going to have an interview with John airing tomorrow.
That's right. And this book really is beautiful. I loved Garth's Tolkien and the Great War, which is one of those books that manages at once to be very scholarly and very carefully annotated, but very, very readable. It's just a really enjoyable is not really the right word when you're talking about the Great War, but it is a page-turning read. It's a fascinating read. And in this book, he's sort of gone even one further and managed to make a book that is academic and scholarly and a fascinating read and like a beautiful coffee table book. You could just leaf through it and see beautiful pictures on any given page and little sort of inset stories about different things. And so it's a wonderful book just to pick up and flick through, and it's terrific. And as Jim said, we have our interview with John Garth that's going out tomorrow, so pre-recorded, but I really hope you guys will tune in for that. Is that 11:30 tomorrow, Jim?
11:30 tomorrow, so tune in then if you are free. And all of the high fantasy, these Zoom chats going over to YouTube will be recorded and available, so you don't have to, even if you want to watch John Garth and you're not there at 11:30, go to the high fantasy YouTube channel and look for that later. So what else is going on?
What else happened in the last couple months? Well,
amazing. With
Rebecca, tell us about the
Yes. I hope you all got to see this back in May. Josh Gad, who is probably best known as the voice of Olaf in the Frozen movies. He's been doing a series on his YouTube channel called Reunited Apart, where he gets movie casts from Ghostbusters and The Goonies and Ferris Bueller's Day Off together, and they're all raising money for different charities. So of course in May he got the cast of The Lord of the Rings, which is amazing. He also got, there's also Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyne and Howard Shore. Taika Waititi stopped by to ask some trivia questions. You can still watch it if you go to his YouTube channel, and you can still donate to No Kid Hungry, which is a great charity that's focusing on ending childhood hunger in America. Especially right now where a lot of kids, their main meal they get is from their meal at school. And so a lot of kids aren't in school right now. And so that's really causing some issues with them. So you can go and donate and watch this incredible video. It's about almost an hour long. It's so funny and so sweet to see how close they all seem to be after over 20 years together. So yeah, go watch that if you haven't already.
Rebecca, you hosted a viewing party for that, didn't you, with your Atlanta?
Yeah, Atlanta Tolkien fans. I know the OneRing.net also did one, and I know there were probably other groups around the country. But yeah, we had even folks, I had a couple people in Germany that somehow found us, and we all watched along together and laughed and cried and sighed, and were very, very wistful. And
it was
they raised lots of money for the charity, which is amazing.
Well, it was one of the great things, there's not many good things that you can say that have come out of coronavirus, really almost none. But this ability to bring people together,
exactly.
I mean, if you tried to gather all of this cast in real life together, it'd just be impossible. They've all got far too much going on, they're far too busy. But when the only way you can get together is online, in some ways it enables you to bring people together that you wouldn't otherwise be able to, just like with DragonCon this year, people who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend in Atlanta are able to be part of it because
exactly.
And it was just amazing to see that many of the cast and crew gathered together. And as Rebecca said there, affection for each other still, and the humor and the banter, and it's, if you haven't seen it, you must watch
And
it.
Ian Holm sent in a really lovely message to everybody. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it because he wasn't feeling well, and as we know, he unfortunately passed away just a few weeks later. So it was really nice that he got to send that message. They also paid tribute to Andrew Jack, who had just recently passed away, who was a dialect coach on Lord of the Rings, and I know he's also worked on Star Wars and lots of other amazing stuff. So that was really lovely, and like Kirsten said, to be able to see everybody, who they're scattered across the globe, and like Kirsten said, it would be almost impossible to get them all together in real life, but to see them all on screen, chatting, it was really lovely.
And fun Josh Gad fact, of course, he has a tenuous 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon connection to Middle Earth cast, because of course he was in the live action Beauty and the Beast with Luke Evans. So
that's right.
He was with Bard in that live action Beauty and the Beast.
As Rebecca said, one of the most poignant moments was when we saw Ian Holm. I think it could have been one of his last videos, as far as I know, because he recorded this in June, or I guess May, and Ian Holm passed away, which is a segue to our little in memoriam segment. We even have music for this. I don't know if I'm sharing my music, actually. I'll stop and I'll start again. How's that? Oops.
Just so you can tug our heartstrings more.
So I can tug the heartstrings.
Because we haven't had a good cry this year.
There we go. I don't know if you can hear that. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So we had some really passing. That's DragonCon.
The Great Orson Bean.
It was not a good year for building. Well, or it was a good year as they passed to the.
You've come to journey's end.
And Ian Holm, of course, was Frodo as well in the BBC radio production.
Yes.
And then probably the most monumental passing
They are calling
was Tolkien's son Christopher
from across a distant shore.
back in January.
Yes, we would not have a lot of the books that we have now if it weren't for him.
Great keeper of his father.
Tears upon your face.
So that's probably enough.
Soon you will see.
Yeah, enough sadness. Stop with the sadness. I love that cartoon Hobbit movie. How they say you always love your first Doctor. There's an element of you always love your first Bilbo, and Orson being there as that cartoon Bilbo. Man, I love that. I love that movie.
Yep.
So
now that kind of wraps up our quick look back. We're moving on to what is coming up next.
What do our elven eyes see?
Our elf eyes see.
And what do we have to look forward to?
Exactly. So
can anyone guess?
Can you guess? That's right. We're going to start, probably the biggest block that we're going to spend on this panel is going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming Amazon series. They're taking the franchise to Amazon. So.
And of course,
and upcoming and
yeah.
Still upcoming.
This a lot last year. We sort of had a whole panel speculating about what this might be. There have been changes, maybe progress, maybe steps backwards in the last 12 months since then. We're also aware that maybe people watching the panel today who were not with us for the panel last year. So what we're going to do is have a kind of slightly more concentrated look over what's going on with the Amazon TV show. What do we know? What is it going to be about? What might the content be? That, that could be a whole hour and more in and of itself. But as we did that last year, we're doing a sort of potted version of it.
The Cliff Notes version.
Exactly.
Right.
So the first thing we're going to do is give everyone just a very quick recap. We did a big timeline last year. So we're going to just use the map that Amazon actually used to announce their intent to concentrate on the second age. And if you're scratching your head wondering, well, what's the second age? There's a good reason. We don't know much about the second age. most of what we have are descriptions of the island of Numenor, and then a pretty lengthy genealogy of all the various Numenorian kings and queens, and a few high spots of particular events, which the Tolkien estate is requiring that Amazon keep within the bounds of those big tentpole events. But as far as a narrative or a lengthy story, there's really only one small story about a queen named Arendis and her mariner husband. And that's about all we have in the unfinished tales. But here's a quick overview just of things that are going on. The Lord of the Rings is a year long. The Second Age is 3,441 years long. And there are a lot of places that are familiar that get founded because all of Middle Earth has been, or at least the northwest part, has been overwhelmed by a great wave. If you get confused by Silmarillion maps versus one Lord of the Rings maps, there's a reason. So you get the Grey Havens founded at the very beginning of the Second Age. We get the island of Westerness or Numenor that's raised up from the sea in 32, and that's where Elrond's brother Elros gets to go with a bunch of Numenorians who have been gifted the island. We have the kingdom of the dwarves in Moria is founded early in the Second Age. We may see some of that. The Tower of Barad-dûr is built in 1000. So 1,000 years in, Sauron is still active and finally begins to emerge and start to build his power. The land of Lorien, Galadriel and Celeborn move to the east of the Misty Mountains in 1350, and shortly thereafter, Rivendell gets born.
Shortly in Elvish terms.
In Elvish terms.
Not very long.
40 years later.
And then the kingdoms, the northern and southern kingdoms of the Numenorians are formed after the downfall, the Atlantis-like overwhelming of Numenor and judgment by the Valar. The big storyline of the Second Age is elves and men get seduced by and then are battling Sauron. So clearly the big bad of the Second Age story is Sauron. One of the questions that we may talk about is, who's the protagonist over 3,441 years? So we may speculate about that in a little bit. You can see that there are lots and lots of those kinds of battles from about middle of the Second Age onward. Television and video and movies love battles, so maybe we'll see some of those. There are, as I said, the rise and fall of Numenor happens, and so we may see the founding of Numenor. We may almost certainly see the collapse of Numenor, which will be highly cinematic. And then finally, right in toward the middle of the Third Age, Sauron makes his rings, which is interesting because that's what we see at the very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. So the movie and the prologue that we've all seen now has a root in the middle of the Second Age, along with the rise of the Nazgul for the ring wraiths. So that's a very sweeping overview of kind of the big events that are happening. Some of the major characters, there are a lot of elves. Elves are immortal. So if we see a long storyline versus concentrated segments in this Amazon series, we are likely to see elves like Elrond and Galadriel and her husband Celeborn are all Second Age citizens. Galadriel goes way back. A guy named Celebrimbor, those of you who like to play what Shadows of Middle Earth might know Celebrimbor is the forger of the rings, a descendant of Feanor. The High King of the Noldor, or one of the branches of the Elves, is Gil-galad, and we see him too at the very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. And then this interesting fellow who dies and gets resurrected, has obscure parentage, lots of debate, is Glorfindel, the guy who in the books was the one who discovered Frodo after he'd been attacked at Weathertop. Don't see him in the films.
You can pretty much guarantee that the elves are going to be key players in the TV series, not just from a plot point of view, and obviously they are, but if you're trying to get people who are fans of the Lord of the Rings movies to watch your TV show, you want to find characters that are familiar to them. And the elves are the characters that you can sort of hang, they're the hook that you can hang your story on, because, okay, not Celebrimbor and Glorfindel so much, but Gil-galad, Elrond, Celeborn and Galadriel, these are characters that we know, particularly Galadriel and Elrond, and Galadriel being someone who lives through the entire Second Age, is likely to be, I think, when Jim was just saying before, we know who our villain of the piece is, who's going to be the hero. Galadriel seems like a likely candidate to me because she is a familiar character, and she was in the Hobbit movies as well. Right. So Elrond and Galadriel, they're familiar to, whether you've only seen the movies or whether you've only read a couple of books, they're characters that are familiar. So that's a great, as I say, hook to hang your series on.
Yeah, exactly. And Galadriel, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is the really the only named character that has been cast with a name that we recognize. Right. We have several names, none of which are familiar to us. They may be placeholder names as far as we know. But Galadriel has been cast, and it would make sense. This may be the Sauron versus Galadriel series, for all we know.
Right. Right.
So here we go. But let me go back to the screen share, because there are more than elves that are likely to be in this series. So let's talk about a few Númenóreans. The most obvious one, I possibly could have thrown up Hugo Weaving's picture here too, because his twin brother, Elrond's twin brother, is Elros, or Taraminiatur. They are the half elven. I don't know which one is the older or the younger. Older bro, younger bro, one of them decided, nah, I'll take the gift of the race of men or humans, which is death, interestingly. And so Elros is the first king of the Númenóreans. We get then a bunch, I call them a bunch of Tars and Ars, because there are a lot of kings and queens of Númenor that will emerge over their 3,000-year lineage. And we may see some of them. They may be the kinds of stories that Amazon uses to embellish, or the writers use to embellish this whole Númenórean story. But they're humans. They live a really long time, hundreds of years, but they don't live the entirety of the whole Second Age. At the very end of the Second Age is one particular king, Ar-Pharazôn the Golden, who's the last king of Númenor. And is also the one that gets seduced. He captures, quote unquote, Sauron in the battles back on Middle-earth and brings him back to Númenor. In theory, he has been reformed, but it's Sauron, for crying out loud. And he commences to seduce Ar-Pharazôn into taking action on his desire to live like an immortal elf does. And he builds a giant armada and attacks the Valinor. You'd think that they would know, but he doesn't. And that leads to only a couple or actually 9 ships and 3 guys that we've known and have seen in the movies. Elendil, we don't see a Narian, who's, I guess, off script or has died. No, he's off script, I think. But Elendil and his son Isildur are ones that we do see, including in the Argonauts. So there are a bunch of men and women that may get fleshed out as part of the plot lines. Any thoughts or reactions on that?
That artist's impression of Ar-Pharazôn there looks very much like an old Aragorn.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that too. I'm like, he reminds me a little bit of Aragorn in that.
Yeah, he was definitely the pinnacle of power for the Númenóreans, but also the pinnacle of arrogance. If you read some of Faramir's recount of Númenórean history, he gets it right. They grew in their arrogance and in their blindness and in false hopes or obsessions with things less noble. So there could be dwarves we certainly saw some of the dwarves of the Second Age. They're the guys that get the 7 rings of the dwarves. If we do, it could be Durin 2 and 3. Durin 1.
Durin, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
right.
that a pop group, I think? Durin. But especially because Moria is founded in the Second Age, and that would be an interesting exploration in and of itself. This great citadel that we see so magnificently in the Lord of the Rings movies is one of my favorite bits in the trilogy, when Gandalf says, "Dare we risk a little more light?" and then we look on the great halls. Then Amazon might well want to capture some of that and explore Moria.
Now let's talk about our antagonists. Our play on seductive Sauron. One thing we know for sure is that Sauron as a Maiar can take many shapes. And the storyline of the Second Age is one that at least begins with seduction, with convincing both men or humans and elves that he's a good guy and he's here to help, just here to help. And so in his appearance, you've got to presume that, like we saw in The Hobbit and Sexy Dwarves, we will see seductive Sauron potentially. Exactly. So, and as we said, we think he's the big bad. The Nazgul form.
Less seductive.
Less seductive, and they increasingly get less and less seductive.
and even less seductive.
So we have the Witch of Angmar, who comes to his own in the Second Age. One of the things we played with is, pretty much January 2020.
That pretty much sums up 2020. Yeah.
So there are.
Except the Witch King's done a much better job of losing weight during lockdown than I have. That's for sure.
So hopefully by December we don't all look like Ori in the next to Balance Tomb.
Now the question is, we talked, and there may be lots of other supplemental roles we don't know, because we don't know a whole lot yet. So who gets those roles? We have a lot of characters, a lot of actors who have been cast, perhaps more than you realize, with Kaya Scodelario as the latest. I think she's Portuguese or Brazilian. I meant to look her up. But the very first cast was Markella Kavanaugh, and then a whole bunch of others, some from franchises you may recognize, like Joseph Mall and Roberto Aramayo, are both from the Game of Thrones franchise. But then
and Joseph Mall was also in Ripper Street. If any of you saw Ripper Street, he was terrific in that. And he was Benjen Stark. If you're thinking, who was he in Game of Thrones? He was Benjen Stark in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that you can see is a broader diversity, perhaps, than we saw in the Rings or the Hobbit movies, both in terms of gender and of ethnicity. And so right here in the middle, Sophia Nombete is a British stage actress. I have no idea what she's been cast for, but she would be an example of Amazon trying to expand the boundaries of what's possible in terms of casting.
Jim, you were just saying about Kaya Scodelario. I just looked her up. I didn't know,
Yeah.
but she is English, but of Brazilian descent. But she's
Right.
an English actress. So, yeah, I mean, looking at these guys, the only ones that I thought, I recognized Joseph Mall, obviously very recognizable. Charles Vickers, I thought I recognized him. So I looked him up. He was in the Medici series. I don't know if any of you watched that, but that was a great show. And that's another sort of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because of course Sean Bean was in the Medici series as well. So, but apart from that, and Roberto, you were mentioning, was in Game of Thrones as well. These are not, a lot of these people are theatre actors and unknowns, and you can maybe have a guess what kind of characters they may have been hired for based on face shape. But Amazon are really keeping very tight a tight lid on any of these roles, who they might be, what they might be playing.
Hence the names that we have. So let's see here. We've got Galadriel, and then Orin, whoever Orin is. Maybe he's the Sauron figure. Don't know. We've got Beldor and Tyra. I bounced them in so I could see them. Megan Richards is May. Trevin and the speculation on Kaya Scodelario is she looks so much like Liv Tyler. Maybe she's Elrond's wife, Celebrian, and Arwen's mother. So hard to say. A few production highlights. It's $1 billion budget. Lord of the Rings combined was 281 million. So there's a lot of money on the table. Real question marks about, is it filming? Is it not filming? They had to stop filming back in March with the Corona outbreak. New Zealand did a wonderful job at closing things down and then allowing folks to start reshooting. But Auckland in particular has had some, for them, serious outbreaks. For the US, it would be like a rounding error. But in New Zealand, they're very serious. So as far as we know, filming is still paused. There was speculation to start back up in September.
If you guys watched yesterday the panel with our Dwarvish friends, with William Kircher and Adam Brown and Stephen Hunter and Jed Brophy, one of the bits I found very interesting in that panel, they were talking about film work and where things have opened again. And Stephen Hunter has been filming, and he was talking about being on a film set recently. And in fact, his colleagues like William Kircher said to him, oh, Stephen, how was that working? And they're all, of course, very interested in how film sets will start up again. And it does sound like in Australia and in New Zealand, they have setups in place where they can be filming. And so it's possible. And in fact, Jed even said yesterday that he'd been doing some motion capture Wert recently, and I was like,
yeah, interesting.
What? So I have a feeling that maybe they are starting things going again, even as we speak. That things
are we just slowly and carefully, I would guess.
Yeah.
So that's hopeful, because they're still predicting a 2021 launch of the series. We've seen a lot of news about the production team. We could go through the list, but then we'd run out of time to talk about all the things. But mostly just to say that they're from very recognizable sources, from Jurassic World, the Star Wars world, Breaking Bad, Stranger Things. And there are some alumni from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series that are coming in various production and things like stunt coordination and video graphic effect kind of things. So keep an eye out for that. But at the same time, there's also been a lot of flux, or reportedly some churn, some real speculation, for example, about whether or not some of the original folks like Tom Shippey or John Howe, or was it John Howe?
Yeah, John, I think, was originally said to be involved, and then there was some talk that he wasn't, and the same with Tom Shippey, that originally it was, oh yes, he's involved, he's attached to the project, and then there was some talk that they weren't. And so whether that's to do with time delays, or I mean, who knows what the truth is behind that, but there seems to have been some coming and going, some parting of the ways perhaps.
Yeah, they're all still staying pretty tight-lipped about all of this.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all under very strict non-disclosure agreement. Sure. That Shippey in particular, maybe John Howe, were brought in mostly to produce that map that we just looked at. And then who knows what's going to be happening from now. 2021 airing, Jay Bayona is doing the first 2 pilot episodes.
And that's exciting to me, I think, because his Monster Calls movie was just an extraordinary film. And The Orphanage as well, I loved, but the Monster Calls particularly, I'm excited that he's helming those first 2 episodes, because I love his visual aesthetic.
Right. We've already got a second season picked up. The agreement was for 5 seasons worth. So hopefully that will happen. And there may even be spin-off series. So we shall see.
Ka-ching.
Right.
And as Kirsten said, the storyline is very tightly under wraps. We basically know nothing beyond what we speculated earlier. And we don't know if who's doing the music, if Weto's going to be involved. It would be insane to me if they weren't. Who future directors will be. So like many TV series, this production will have multiple directors.
Right.
Will Peter Jackson ever be invited?
I mean, you know, that is kind of exciting. I know.
And would he do it if he was invited?
I can hear people now being like, no. And I know that people get quite aerated about that they say Peter Jackson has had his crack at Middle Earth, it's time for someone else. And I agree with that. I want to see a different aesthetic, but once an aesthetic has been established, I would be well up for an episode directed by PJ, an episode directed by Guillermo del Toro. I think that would an episode.
Taika Waititi would be really interesting.
Who did an episode of The Mandalorian?
Right.
An episode perhaps directed by Andy Serkis. You know, that I think there's a lot of scope for people whose names are well associated with Middle Earth, not to hijack the series, but within the tone that is established by Bayona and at the beginning, to have a go to, you know, and I would be up for seeing that. I would be excited to see that.
Well, we're going to talk about in a minute some of the production challenges that we have. And one of those challenges is that unlike The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, we don't have a ready-made fan base who's just already familiar with the stories and is really looking forward to seeing a story they know converted over into another story. We have scenes. So the idea of, well, I know that Numenor collapses. That would be really cool to see on film. But so the idea of pulling in familiar, connected directors, and Amazon has got to figure out how to build buzz for
I mean, they've certainly got the money to build as much buzz as they want to build, and I'm sure they could probably bring in anybody that they wanted to with that kind of budget.
I do just want to remind folks whilst we're going along with this that we are happy to take your questions or comments at any point. You don't have to wait till a sort of, and now we'll take questions at the end, because I don't think we're going to do that, to be honest. I think we're going to go right
and no prizes under, you know, we're not going to be picking chairs like we have in the past. Right?
Feel free to chime in anytime in the YouTube chat and throw your comments, thoughts, questions our way.
Yeah, there's a pretty lively chat going on. So feel free over there on YouTube to speculate on who you want to see as a director as well.
Or what storylines you are hoping that they do.
So here are some of the challenges. I put the two showrunners, Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne, have been buddies like since I think high school. And I put Star Trek IV fading out because that has been an on again, off again, mostly off again kind of a movie. And so it shows that there are challenges that even somebody as moneyed as Amazon will face. How do you establish the visual world? Do you make it brand new? Do you pick up the look of the existing established world that Peter Jackson did?
And if Weta end up not being involved, which, as you said, Jim, it seems so unlikely. I mean, they're filming in New Zealand. You feel like it would be almost impossible to get the visual effects and the actual material effects, props and things that you need in New Zealand without using Weta.
Exactly.
But one reason they might shy away from that is, would they fear that it was difficult to move to a new visual world if they were still using Weta? Of course, Weta can make anything you want, so they wouldn't need to fear that, I don't think. But I can understand the connotations that it may have for Amazon.
Yeah. We have thousands, not 1 year of history. So our characters, particularly the mortal ones, will have to be more episodic. You won't create if Amazon chooses to do a 3,000-year storyline, you can't have one human carrying that whole thing.
Right.
So generations. we have the question, and we talked about this, who's the protagonist? Our hunch is that it's Galadriel. Others will carry the parts of that, I'm sure. What's the story? I mean, the beauty of both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is it was an adventure or a quest with a direction, there and back again, or just there for Frodo. What's the story if it isn't a quest? Especially when we're filling in all the edges, is this, is this going to turn into fan fiction?
Right. But
Sort of.
here's an interesting point, though, of course. We know, and I know that we've said this 1,000 times, but as a reminder, at the moment, the only rights that have been sold are for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So the only material that can be used has to come from those books or the appendices of the Lord of the Rings. That's it. Cannot use material from the Silmarillion, for example. However, with Christopher Tolkien having died at the beginning of this year, and the Tolkien estate already had been handed over by him in the last year of his life, but we could potentially see the Tolkien estate take a different tack and decide to sell the rights to the Silmarillion, for example. This, with Amazon being invested for at least 2 seasons, potentially 5, they're invested for the long haul. I am sure they are sitting with their fingers firmly crossed that that is what will happen, that the new generation taking over running this estate will decide to sell further rights, and then there is more established material available to them if that happens. Although, as Jim said at the beginning, not much about the Second Age.
We had one comment, what's wrong with fan fiction? Nothing's wrong with fan fiction, but we can see, and that's why I use the Game of Thrones allusion.
Right.
It went off the rails in their last 2 seasons, but this is not the Game of Thrones panel. It's a One Ring panel.
Let's carry on.
Who's the target audience? We don't have a lot of readers of the Second Age story like we did with The Lord of the Rings and with The Hobbit. And in particular, will there be pressure to incorporate, cable level adult content into Tolkien?
Yeah, I know some people who fear that they just think, oh, this is going to be and end up being Game of Thrones, medieval sex,
Right.
I doubt it. I really don't personally think that's going to happen, but I know some people.
Especially if the Tolkien estate has anything to say about it, and I'm sure that they will. I'm sure. So I can't see that they would be okay with that happening.
Man,
right, we better go quickly through the speculation.
Yeah, I know. We got to get to what's coming up. In addition to the Amazon series, speculation. So this is a picture of Dylan Smith. It popped up on his Twitter feed, and you may have noticed he was one of those little panels on the montage of actors that have been named, and then the speculation started going. It's like, so is this his makeup? It almost certainly is not. He's probably toying with us, and I think it came up that he was in some old Scandinavian movie that featured Neanderthals, and so this is probably from that production. But it kind of raises all kinds of room for speculation, which we do not have time really to cover because we need to keep pushing. So we'll just lay this out there for you all to keep talking about on the chat. But so there's so many questions. What are our hopes? What stories are you looking to see? Do you like the idea of a sexy Sauron? We talked about the direct. Should the elves, who carries the main narrative? Any further casting speculation? So I think that's any quick hot topic ideas that are on the top of your mind about what this Amazon thing could bring with
I
it.
say yes to sexy Sauron, and I'm not talking about the Amazon series, just in my life in general. I say yes to sexy Sauron.
Yeah, I think that's the next T-shirt.
Just say yes.
All right.
That's
well,
right.
We have about 10 minutes, so let's
Yeah.
see what else. So we've looked back over the last 12 months since we were all last together at DragonCon, everything that's happened in Tolkien fandom or highlights of it. We've looked at what might be coming up in 2021 and what they're working on, we hope right now, for the Amazon series. Now we're looking at what else can we expect in the next 12 months before we meet again, and I hope really meet again in Atlanta next year. What can we look forward to? What
So,
else do
what
I see?
your elf eyes see? Indeed. We got to rip through this too because there's so
Yeah.
much. There are more books that are coming. Actually the Second Age is talked most about in the Unfinished Tales, and HarperCollins is seeking to lighten your wallet even more with a beautiful illustrated edition that is coming out in October of this year. There will likely be, we'll use a German word, a Festschrift, a celebration writing, collection of folks writing in Christopher Tolkien's honor that will come out of the Bodleian sometime in 2020. And what's really exciting are rumors of another JRR Tolkien book, The Nature of Middle-earth, really compiling his writings, his late writings from 1959 to 1973 when he died. That HarperCollins will be publishing next May. So keep an eye out for those guys. More books are coming. As Rebecca Deej said, there is a new audiobook just out that Andy Serkis has done. We don't have time to play any of it, but
The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss.
I'll stop because I didn't share my.
But you
Yeah.
can find that online. You can get a preview
I just-
online, and then
Yes, you can go to Audible. You can go, I believe, also get it through HarperCollins website.
Were pale eyes sticking out at him.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Who are you? He said, thrusting the dagger out in front of him. The Hobbit.
So
Oh, what a tease!
a tease. That's just a tease. So look for the new Hobbit audiobook. Andy Serkis featured, and everyone, here's a speculation: will he do the whole Lord of the Rings someday?
No. That's my answer.
That would be a pretty big undertaking for one guy to do
There
that.
are calendars coming out for 2021.
Calendar?
Beautiful Tolkien
Fan challenge,
calendar.
the Lord of Trivia.
I'm excited for that art calendar. That looks really spectacular.
We've got some new clothing things coming out.
this-
These
This
folks.
is an exclusive sneak preview. Don't say the OneRing.net never gives you anything. These guys, Volantis. Oh, you haven't got their Volante Design. You have got it up there, but not
Yeah,
the
it's
website there, Jim. Well, anyway, if you look up Volante Design, they're a company, they're franchised by Middle-earth Enterprises. They're licensed, I mean, by Middle-earth Enterprise. And they make these amazing jackets and things that are inspired by different fandoms, but they're sort of just everyday clothing. I mean, they're like a slightly more exotic version of everyday clothing, but you can see that the ring race jacket, it's a coat that you could wear day in, day out. It's not cosplay in that sense, but inspired by the ring race or inspired by Gondorian jerkins. So they kindly sent us these two pictures. These items are coming out later this year. So that's a sneak
Gonna need that ring wraith coat.
pretty awesome, right?
I
That's a
bet
sneak
you-
peek of Volante Designs' new clothing.
There are a lot of collectibles. If you watched any of the Weta announcements that happened back in July, they are coming out with all kinds of stuff. Some of it is actually quite affordable, like these mini epics. And so for those looking for warrior women, and we've been talking about that earlier on the high fantasy track, you can get your Eowyn and Arwen mini epics or Radagast. They're even releasing Smaug coming out.
And if you're interested in collectibles, of course, keep an eye on the website, because Josh writes his wonderful column, Collecting the Precious, and he keeps us up to date on all these collectibles that are coming out from Weta and from other companies as well.
This cave troll is, they actually released one shortly. It was one of their first figures that Weta released. This one is a true 1:6 or 6:1, whatever way that works.
Sixth
No,
scale.
1:6.
Yeah.
If it was 6:1, you couldn't fit it in your house.
Right, exactly.
So,
Beautiful.
and if you really, really want to pack out, you can get their master collection release for this year, or I guess next year, 2021. That you can get not only Thranduil, but his entire throne. And that thing is enormous. It is a meter high and a meter wide.
You would definitely need a big house to.
You know, be like my
display
living
that.
room just
Right.
gone.
Richard
Right.
Taylor in the announcement said, I don't know who's going to buy this. I don't think I could fit this in my house. So
But it's beautiful.
But
It's gorgeous.
there's
Our
more.
good friends at Badali have, again, don't say we never give you anything. They have given us an exclusive code. If you go to their website and you put Torn15, you can get a 15% discount off your entire purchase there. They make the most beautiful, again, Middle-earth Enterprises licensed jewelry inspired by Middle-earth and all things Tolkien. And they've just come out with their Rohan horse earrings to go with the Eowyn shield pendant. You can see those featured together. Those earrings are new. They're absolutely beautiful. And like so many small businesses, Badali, of course, are having a tough time, like we all are, through lockdown, through not being able to be at conventions and sell. So if you want to show some love for your fellow fans, head on over to badalijewelry.com, and they've generously, as I say, given you that Torn15 code for a discount at checkout. And you know, if you're a Wheel of Time fan, they have Wheel of Time inspired jewelry. I mean, they have all different franchises of fantasy inspired jewelry, and they are spectacular. So check them out.
And I think they're pretty much guaranteeing if you buy one of the 9 rings of men that you will not turn into a wraith. There are no
pretty much guarantee.
Right. There are a lot of new games coming out.
It's games.
Games. One of the ones, the feature is this. Well, if you're playing Lord of the Rings online, you probably already know that they have a new release or a new. You know, I don't play, so the War of the Three Peaks is Durin or dwarf centric, and they're introducing play into that at all different levels and new housing and an Eye of Sauron effect, which I guess is pretty punishing when it's present. There's a new Gollum game that's coming out that's getting some play on the various interwebs. And apparently, it's going to feature a young pre-Gollum Smeagol in it as well. So look for games all the way to Mithril miniature releases. So fun stuff. Our friends at Usha, they're there in Scotland with you.
Look at this.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing so Kirsten can.
Very cool.
And everyone's like, wow, we wish she'd been wearing that through the whole thing, and we'd shut up. Usha make beautiful fabrics and patterns, and we in fact just helped them host their contest to have a new design, which one of our followers entered and made that new design that you can see there on the screen right now.
It's gorgeous.
It's just amazing the way it's the reflection, and you've got the light on the top and the dark on the bottom, so the moon and the sun, just fabulous. That's the new competition winning design. They're making masks. They're this kind of mask with the metal strip shape. They also have those kind of pleated type of masks in various different beautiful Middle-earth fabrics. Yeah, check out Usha. They're great. They're great supporters of the OneRing.net, and we love what they're making. Oh look, Jim has one of their mugs.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
Indeed. So what else is coming?
Apart from
all of that.
Usha,
there's even more. So if you like to support our Hobbit Drinking Songs panel, which is coming up tomorrow night at 8:30, it's probably too late to order, but sometime in 2021, you should pick this up, maybe even bring it to next year's con, assuming we're all live.
I think that's great. I can't wait for that. A Lord of the Rings Pilsner in a animated, decorated can. I think that's awesome. Can't wait for that. Beer, Hobbit beer.
Yes.
Now,
New projects.
We just don't have time to talk about it at all, but The Voice season 2 is out now on Amazon.
Amazing show. So much. It's so cool. Carl Urban's amazing in it.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. That are the actors that we know and love are in things that are coming up. They're working on projects. Ian McKellen is working on a production of Hamlet at the Royal Theatre Royal in Windsor. So there's all kinds of things that are going on with the actors that we love. Keep your eyes peeled for those.
And Andy, yeah, and well, the fun thing about Cate Blanchett is that this is a Guillermo del Toro directed film, so that'll be an interesting thing. Viggo Mortensen is directing and starring in a movie called Falling that was at Cannes. An unrecognizable Sean Bean. I
say that's really, I really didn't recognize Sean Astin.
And our favorite sexy dwarf.
Sean Bean, and a totally recognizable Aidan Turner, looking pretty much the same as he always does.
I think Orlando Bloom is doing a second season of that show Carnival Row. That's on Amazon.
Yep. If you're in the Milwaukee area, they have a running open exhibit on Tolkien manuscripts that will happen from April to November, coronavirus willing, on like third or fourth Fridays each month. So look for that. And remember, 2021 is the anniversary of the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, which some of us watched last night. A little history, May the 14th, 1999, we had our first spy report on the onering.net about London casting.
So we're hoping, of course, and I'm just very aware that we have come to the end of our hour. So we are hoping that we will all be able to gather next year to celebrate the 20th anniversary in New Zealand. That was the plan. We hope it still is the plan. Plans have been put on hold a bit, of course, as we know this year. But hopefully this time next year, we will be in Atlanta talking about the plan of us all going to New Zealand together a few months later. Let's hope.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Hey, Kirsten, I think we have one more reveal.
We do. Again, so we decided that we wanted to find a way to bring you t-shirts, even though Deej and I are not there in person at a fan table to sell them to you this year. And it's some years since the onering.net has sold t-shirts online, but that's what we're doing this year. So we don't have the link yet. We're just setting it up. What I can tell you is it will be on the onering.net very soon. So just check back with our website. We'll put it on our Facebook group and our Facebook page as well. You will be able to choose the style of shirt. So we have two designs themed for 2020. So the design that you can see that go back to the shadow, that's our Sauron-virus, if you will. And then the other design, so we've got the one that is trying to send away the virus, and then the other which is to encourage hope. Our shadows are fleeting and merry our meeting, be of good hope. And then our slogan for 2020, a year of slogans, is hope is kindled. So the go back to the shadow one, I believe will have the onering.net's logo and the hope is kindled 2020 on the back. And then as you can see on the shadows are fleeting and merry our meeting shirt, you've got hope is kindled 2020 and the One Rings logo on the front. The shirts that you see there, you can choose any color you want. You can choose whether it's a fitted shirt or a regular cut shirt. You can choose a raglan style with the different colored sleeves. There'll be a whole range. They will be around $20, but the exact price will depend on the type of shirt that you choose. And then of course there'll be shipping on top of that. But basically you will be able to go to a website and pick which design you want and then pick the shirt that you want it on. And those are our 2020 t-shirt designs for you. And we hope that you enjoy them. Hope is
yes, and we will have the links up as soon as they're available to share to everyone. So you can get your shirts. And maybe buttons, maybe.
Yeah, we might be adding a couple of Hope is Kindled 2020 buttons as well, because we could all do with a little hope right now. Well, guys, I know we're at the end of our time, and it always flies by when we're all together having fun at Virtual DragonCon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, my colleagues.
Thank you.
Mad-Eye Gamgee. We hope that the onering.net will be back with you at DragonCon in person next year. We always love being with you guys. Meanwhile, keep in touch with us through Facebook, through the website, buy the shirts, support those businesses that are our fellow fans, and join us maybe next week. We might do another online viewing, not through DragonCon, but if you enjoyed last night's fellowship viewing, we could host a 2 Towers viewing next Friday.
And we'll
yes. Take care. Stay safe.
See you guys. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Stay tuned for more high fantasy happiness.